This is The Toss-Up, where an expert line panel dissects the hottest stories within the world of sports. From some of the nation's strongest college programs right here in Bloomington to the games and moments that capture the world's attention. It's all right here on The Toss-Up, and it starts right now. The Indiana men's soccer team's quest for its 9th title was cut short again last season. But this time, with a lot of production returning, it was perhaps cut a lot shorter than most had hoped. Now the Hoosiers enter the spring season with the same expectations, but more question marks than they had at this point last year. This year's quest for 9 may not come to a close until winter, but make no mistake, it starts right now. Hi everybody, my name is Michael Dugan. Joining me on the panel this week, we have Phil Steinmetz, Juan Diego Alvarado, and Austin Matricardi. Austin, we'll kick it to you first here. The title run ended short last season in what most people thought, or a lot of people at least thought, was a season they were teed up for bringing home that 9th cup best. They thought that this was probably the best situation they had going into the season and throughout the season in an extremely long time. But just how much production, are they losing from that run?
So much. It's really hard to just say how much it is. To put it simply, 9 of 11 starters. Some of the best players that this team has seen since the turn of the century, since the new millennium. It's just so much. So much.
Almost impossible to quantify.
Yes.
Yeah, like Austin said, those 9 players going pro were the core of Indiana men's soccer's lineup. It's a lot of homework for Todd Yegley and his coaching staff, a lot of work coming up for them to replace all these players, find new pieces for this puzzle, and make, again, a winning team like the last 2 Indiana men's soccer team sides were.
Yeah, and kind of with that, the only 2 players returning who scored any goals for men's soccer last season are Spencer Glass and AJ Palazzolo, who both came off the bench last season. So yeah, they're gonna have a tough task replacing basically the entire offensive production.
Is there a chance that, Austin, you undersold it by just saying so much about 50 times? Because I feel like that's the case right now. You're underselling it by saying that.
Dude, it's so much. There's just a lot of really great players that the Hoosiers have had over the last 2 years, and now for the most part, they're all gone.
A lot of room for opportunity now, though.
There is. And there's a lot of exciting younger prospects, but basically everybody that has produced something for the Hoosiers over the last 2 seasons that have been very, very good with very good teams, those guys are all gone.
Juan, you mentioned there is a lot of room, and there certainly is when you have a lot of guys or women depart from a team, whatever that may be. There's room for people to step up, and people have to step up if you're going to succeed. Phil, who's going to step up and establish themselves this spring as the team's leader or emotional leader or vocal leader that every team needs if they're going to get over the top?
Yeah, I think that guy's going to be Spencer Glass. He's going to be a junior coming into next season, and he's going to be one of the vocal leaders of the team, considering he's going to be kind of have to. He was he had some of the most minutes off the bench last season, and even Todd Yegley says he has his famous left foot, and I think he could have a type of season that Trevor Schwartz had last season, as having double-digit assists and even scoring even more goals, probably within the 6 to 7 range. So I think he's going to really be a key part to the offense in the spring, and I think it could really revolve around him.
For me, it's going to be Jack Mayer. He's playing on that center back position where he gets a great view of the entire field. He already had a great challenge this year with being the replacement of Grant Lillard. He played next to Team Email, and now he's going to be that rock IU needs on the back, and hopefully he steps up as the vocal leader for Indiana men's soccer. He has the capacity, and he can do it very well.
It seems like each sport has a position where, you need a guy that's going to be vocal, going to have that kind of leadership. You've got your quarterbacks, your point guards, you've got your catcher in baseball. I think in soccer that position is the goalkeeper. Trey Muse over the last 2 years has done a very good job of being vocal, organizing his defense, and there was a lot of really great results to come from that. Muse is now with Seattle Sounders, no longer here in Bloomington, so Sean Caulfield's going to be in his place, and I think it comes down to Sean Caulfield to be a leader for this team.
Yeah, they don't even have Trey Muse coming back, their anchor of a keeper that they had last year, perhaps unexpectedly to most, to fall back on. It's quite literally everything has to be filled. But Austin, we'll go to you first here. What's the most important thing that you personally want to see, because there are unlimited options here in terms of what the team needs to fill, but what's the most important task in your eyes that this team needs to address or attack in this upcoming spring season before the fall comes around?
I believe that it has to be just building up some chemistry and building a repertoire with the guys that are going to be on the field together, because there were plenty of guys that were playing off the bench last year, but they were playing with guys that are gone now. You might not have had A.J. Palazzolo and Spencer Glass in the game at the same time all the time per se. They might not have had enough time on the pitch together to build that kind of know-how with each other. So I think that building up that kind of that knowledge of each other's games and building that chemistry is something that the Hoosiers really need to focus on.
For me, I'm excited to see all these freshmen that barely saw minutes this season coming in and fighting for their spot. Like you said, Sean Caulfield is also a big name that might become a leader. He saw the last 2 College Cups from the bench. I think he's like hungry for like having minutes on the field and leading the team. And I also would like to see, like you said, A.J. Palazzolo and Spencer Glass taking on that leader role, so we can have the experience from them gelling perfectly with the fresh blood, which is in the freshmen that were in the bench and the new faces that Indiana's going to get.
Yeah, I think also kind of with that, IU does have a lot of players who didn't see any time last season who's going to be asked to fill these big shoes. But also the one transfer coming in of Simon Weaver, he is a senior from Evansville and is going to be a really key part of that back line. And he was actually added to the spring roster this season. And I think it's going to be really interesting to see how he gels with everybody else, considering he hasn't played with anybody before. And he's probably going to be a day one starter for them. So I'm going to be interested to see the spring of how he kind of gels with that back line.
We could probably go around and each pick 3 more because of how much there is to be said about basically everything going into the season. But we have to cut to break right now. So coming up after the break, our panel is going to dive deeper in this conversation, and we'll do our lightning round, so stick with us. Welcome back to the Toss-Up. We're talking Indiana men's soccer and their upcoming spring season. But before we keep going, our very own Drew Fry is at the media wall. Drew?
The spring schedule for IU men's soccer has been released, which features 3 home matchups plus a trip to Mexico in March. The 2019 Hoosiers are vastly different from the team which made it to the College Cup back-to-back seasons. Almost a dozen members of last year's squad have moved on to bigger and better things, including Mac Hermann Trophy winner Andrew Gutman and sophomore goalie Trey Muse. Although the school year hasn't ended for most, the current men's soccer team will have to carry on through the spring without almost all of their former starters. Until the new recruiting class comes in this fall, the team will be led by guys like Spencer Glass and Jack Mayer, among others. But there are a couple new faces coming in who will be looking to contribute immediately for the Hoosiers. Andrew Goldsworthy is a freshman who is starting his collegiate career a bit early. He's a 3-star recruit from Bloomington North and is currently eligible to play for the Hoosiers after signing and enrolling this winter. As a defender, Goldsworthy was ranked in the top 15 in his region and has 2 years of experience in the Indiana Fire Academy. Speaking of experience, the Hoosiers are also bringing in senior Simon Weaver, a native of Denmark. Weaver has spent the past 3 seasons as a defender for Evansville. He has been named to first-team All-Missouri Valley Conference twice and will look to bring his success to the Big Ten. He may not have a long career in Indiana, but he surely wants to make it count. Meanwhile, for the rest of the young Hoosier roster, this spring will serve as a chance to get some much-needed action as they prepare for another potentially strong fall campaign. Michael, back to you.
All right, thanks, Drew. Okay, guys, we're going to play Make Your Case. Austin, make your case for the breakout player this upcoming season.
I believe it's going to be Joe Schmidt. He's a guy that was very, very, he showed a lot of promise in the preseason last year. He didn't get a lot of playing time once the season started just because there were so many guys in front of him. But now that those guys are gone, I think he can come in, he can play in the 10 role for the Hoosiers. He can be creative on the offensive end. He can pick up the pace a little bit, and I think that he'll be a big breakout player.
He can be a new Tanner Thompson, actually. But for me, it's going to be Ryan Winterbrink, the player we're going to see. You know how South Americans, we're all about those number 9s, and I think his physicality and he's really excited to play for Indiana men's soccer. He's been saying that on Twitter, that he's ready to be playing on the cream and crimson uniform. I think he's going to bring a lot of goals for Indiana men's soccer, as well as leadership and all you want to see on a good striker.
Yeah, and my selection probably isn't really surprising, but I'm going to see Jack Mayer, considering he's going to be asked to fill such a leadership role now in that back line. And I think since by Top George Soccer named him as the number 4 freshman in the country last season, and I think he's going to become a top 5 player in the country next season.
It's really interesting with Mayer, too, because last season assistant coaches were saying that they wouldn't trade Mayer for anybody in the country as a freshman. He's just a very skilled player. He's very, very diverse skill set. I think that he's got a lot to bring to the table.
And we talked about this earlier, like how we said if Mayer gets more physical, he goes to the weight room.
If he spends the offseason in the weight room, he could be scary.
He certainly has my vote. He might be the odds-on favorite. Who's going to be the best newcomer this upcoming season?
I think that's going to be Simon Weaver, considering he is he's going to be one of 3 seniors on the team, period. So it's a really young team. So I think he's really going to affect that back line tremendously. And I think he's going to fit right in and really help IU, who's always known to have these historically great back lines. And I don't think, obviously, the back line probably won't be as strong as it was last season, but I think the defense will still be right there for IU, led by him.
Victor Becerra is going to bring so much diversity in the play of Indiana men's soccer with his background and his experience playing for pro clubs, not only in the United States, but also in Europe. I think that factor that he's going to bring something different to the table for Indiana men's soccer, it's going to be what marks him as the special newcomer.
I'm going to go with Joshua Penn. We've seen in the past that Todd Yeagley isn't afraid to play young guys, especially when they're talented and they have a pedigree. Joshua Penn is a U.S. Youth National Team guy, and he plays a position very similar to what Griffin Dorsey has played for the Hoosiers in the past. So I think he could just slot right in there on the wing and be Griffin Dorsey's replacement.
Couple of glaring names for this one that come to mind first. I'm not sure how many candidates there are realistically right now outside of those, but who's going to be the MVP that emerges this spring going into next season?
This is a tough one because there's a lot of different options, but I think that Spencer Glass is your guy. Andrew Gutman kind of ran the team last year. He was the Mac Hermann Trophy winner. You know, he just was so great for the Hoosiers. I think that Spencer Glass could come in and fill that left back role and be very productive. He could score a lot of goals. He could be a very good leader for this team.
Jack Mayer, he's going to be a rock on that defense. He's going to make Indiana men's soccer feel secure having him on the back. And I think, he's going to be the MVP just for his leadership and his consistency on the back line.
Yeah, and then I'm going to go with actually Sean Caulfield, considering he did have 2 years behind Trey Muse, who was this All-American goalie. And I talked to him before, and he said of how it was like this experience that he got to learn from him, and it was kind of invaluable for him. And I think he's really going to turn some heads this spring season, being the number 1 goalie on the team. And I think he's going to be really a key going forward for the Hoosiers, and then he's really going to prove it in the spring.
No pressure here, but I want to bat 1,000 for the lightning round and last word. The lightning round starts right now. Answers have to be 10 seconds or less. Austin, how bad will Trey Muse's departure hurt this team? How big of a hole is he leaving behind?
I think he leaves a pretty big hole. He's one of the best over the last 2 years in the college soccer world, but Sean Caulfield appears like he could be a worthy candidate to replace him.
Yeah, it's going to be a big gap left there by Muse, but Indiana fans should be confident that Sean Caulfield will get the job done and cover it.
Yeah, and then I think as an All-American, obviously you have to say it's a it's going to be a big hole, but I think Sean Caulfield is clearly going to be a guy that's going to be up for that challenge.
Obviously tough to predict how the Big Ten is going to play out next year, but right now, looking at departures across the conference, including Indiana and people coming in, where do they stand on paper in comparison to the rest of the conference?
I think IU is obviously going to be up there top of the conference like they usually are with like Maryland, Michigan State, and Michigan. So I would say right now they're easily going to be a top 3 team in the conference.
I agree. Indiana is such a big program that recruits so well each year that it's really hard for them to go under that top 3. So as well as Phil said, top 3 for me too.
Yeah, they're definitely still one of the elite teams in the conference just because of the amount of talent that they have.
Now, that talent may not be as high as it was the last couple of seasons, but it also might be. We don't know. There are so many question marks as we touched on earlier. So is this team's ceiling right now, as you see it, as high as the past 2 or 3 seasons, or is it not quite there, or is it simply too early to tell?
It's too early to tell, but if I had to pick, I would say that it's not, because these last 2 years they've been national championship caliber teams. I don't think the Hoosiers have that because of the youth.
We got to keep something in mind. A name that hasn't come to any of our mouths is Todd Yeagley. He's still on charge of the team, and he knows what he's doing. So I say that the team ceiling will always be Todd Yeagley's ceiling.
Yeah, and I think the ceiling is right up there as well, considering they're probably going to have a top 16 team in this way tournament like they usually do. And I think with Todd Yeagley and Spencer Glass and also Joshua Penn, who I think is going to fill a really large role, I think their ceiling is just probably almost as high as probably anyone or like any top 10 teams in the country.
All right, last time around is the shortest time around. Last word on this upcoming Indiana men's soccer spring season, going into next season in one word, Austin.
New.
Exciting.
Reload.
All applicable terms. Gentlemen, thank you for joining me tonight. That does it for the show this week. Be sure to continue the discussion on our Twitter page at IUSTV Sports and on Facebook at IUSTV Sports. You can always give any suggestions for the show and ask any questions that you may have. Toss it up. Find out if we'll catch it. We'll see you next time.